Should you get the ROG Ally X? I honestly ask myself this question every time. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's probably the most impressive gaming handheld I've ever seen. Every single bit about it is better, if not equal to the previous generation here, which is the ROG Ally, I guess Gen 1. The problem is that the ROG Ally X is like crazy expensive. So I always just kind of like held off on my decision whether I really wanted to go forward with it or not. So here we are going to address it in this video. We're going to be talking about the specs. We're going to be talking about like the differences between the two, the pros of the Ally X, the cons of the handheld. And by the end of all this, discern whether or not this is something that's worth it for you and me. Full disclosure, this is going to be from the perspective of someone who already owns an ROG Ally, but I also believe that this is something that can also benefit anyone who's just simply looking for a handheld device. Maybe not ROG, or maybe you are looking for the Ally X and you want to see whether or not the original might be worth it for you. So first of all, let's take a look at the ROG Ally X and its specs. We're working with an AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme processor. We have a 7-inch IPS screen, supports 120 Hz, 1080p. We have 24 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD. We have a Thunderbolt 4 port, and we have an 80 watt hour battery. There are a lot of other specs like within it, but these are kind of like the important ones just to keep in mind of. But I want to point out that my particular model of the ROG Ally, as well as the ROG Ally X, have the same processor. They have both 7-inch screens, 1080, 120 hertz, so that has not changed whatsoever. One of the things that has changed is the fact that we have 24 gigs of RAM on that one versus 16 on this guy. Certainly helps with like the load of things like when it comes to running games, but other than that, there's not too dramatic changes in performance from what I understand. We also have 1 terabyte of storage. This is pretty big because this guy right here and the other model of this one, which is like the Z1 processor, just 512 gigs. It's a workable amount of space, but when you have multiple like places that you're getting your games from and you're all loading them onto the ROG, it does take up a lot of space pretty quickly. I find that especially true if you have Game Pass on this guy. Now, granted, I think you'll get the same results if you have the ROG Ally X as well, but not only do you have 1 terabyte just from the get-go, but it's also upgradable and in actually the best way possible. It's not only just 1 terabyte of storage, but also it's something that supports 2280, that particular type of SSD, you know, long sticks versus like the smaller ones that this one only exclusively had supported, otherwise known as the like 2230. I just usually call them the SSD micros or SSD minis. So as far as like the route to upgrade, it is actually cheaper going forward when it comes to the Ally X. Granted, you already do have like 1 terabyte, so I think you can really just juggle with that one. The other thing that I should probably bring up is the Thunderbolt 4. So the Ally X actually has 2 USB ports, and this is something that's actually really good if you want to put this and display it outward to another monitor without the use of another, you know, dock or adapter. With it, you actually save a little bit of money on like buying something separate, and you just have like the appropriate cables just to plug it into another monitor and you're set. And finally, that 80 watt hour battery. This guy right here is only 40 watt hour. You could probably guess what it means. It means that you can play your games for twice as long. Your mileage will vary depending on the game and your power settings. So now that we got all that out of the way, let's talk about like the pros of the ROG Ally X. Better battery life. That's without a question. We literally just talked about like 80 watt hour. Just any improvement on battery is just such a great thing to like do for such a like a form factor like this one. Granted, I actually don't know like the distinctions in like how like bigger like that Ally X is versus the original. All I know is that the form factor is like shifted a little bit. I think we're gonna see this more in the future with other handheld devices, but I think with the Z1 Extreme and the 120 Hertz display, giving you access to potentially seeing like really like high performing games, or at least just higher frame rates. It's just really nice to see when you actually like have that like ability to access it. Last thing I want to note is the fact this is actually something that applies to both devices, but the ROG is just a Windows device, and as a result you are actually able to play your games from different places, whether that be Epic Games, Steam, Xbox itself, Xbox Game Pass, even cloud gaming is accessible here. Although at this point, maybe you don't really need to do that, but it is an option. I will also give shout outs. They also have like 2 back buttons, but the ROG Ally X, from what I understand, has smaller back buttons, so it's far less likely for you to actually press them. Although I never really had issues myself with these ones, but hey, that's pretty nice. But yeah, I think that's everything for like the pros. Unless there's something else, just let me know. The cons. Expensive. We are talking $800, and we'll get back to it. I also want to bring up the fact that it is still just an IPS screen. It'd be Really cool if it was an OLED screen, but I also understand that would be additional costs as well. I mean, I personally never had big problems with the display, but if you ever seen an OLED display, it changes a lot. But the thing is that at $800, it almost seems a little bit better if you were to recommend yourself like an actual like fully upgradable, tower, so you can actually make that work and make it even better as the years go by, as you like accrue more income and put a little bit more like stuff into it as far as investments. Because when you have these gaming handhelds, it's not really easy to upgrade them per se. There are mods to like do all this stuff, but it's nothing like too simplistic where you can just press a button, you're done. Ultimately, the idea is to put this into like one whole package that you could just have like by itself. And the idea of like upgrading it even further can be a little daunting. And if anything, it's just not user friendly, Yeah, I've been flashing the ROG Ally as just kind of an illustration point, but despite the upgrades that the Ally X has, you can still actually get this for even cheaper. Yeah, the thing is that they probably won't be supporting the Ally for that long and rather be pushing the Ally X and whatever else they have in store. As a result, these guys are actually going down in price. Previously $700, now $650, but there are some discounts you might see like as the year goes by, so keep an eye out for that too. Honestly, because of the fact that it has like the same processor, you're not really getting like that much performance out of like the Ally X as you are getting from here. So as long as you have like a place where you can like charge this guy, and you could put up with the storage space, I don't really see many issues they can have with this one. And then, it is Windows. I do say that Windows helps you like operate all these different like platforms for like playing your games, but it also is just the Windows experience. So if you don't feel comfortable like navigating things like with the right stick and you don't have any accessories to plug in like a mouse to help you navigate, it can be kind of a cumbersome experience. I will admit that. Typically the way I address it is that this is a touchscreen, so you can just navigate that way, and typing, you kind of have to work with it. Let's go into the outro. Is it worth it? Well, honestly, if you really are in the market for like a handheld gaming device, and it isn't the Switch, I would actually recommend going for the older model. I think right now the ROG Ally X is just like a stepping stone above, and it's not a full transfer. Honestly, I would recommend just waiting for the ROG Ally 2 and really observe what they're doing to improve on that one. And more importantly, look at the price tag on that one. If this ROG Ally 2 becomes $1,000, I'd kind of just recommend you get just like a regular tower at that point. Yeah, otherwise, I would just recommend going with the original right here. Also, if you have an ROG Ally, you have the Lenovo Legion Go or anything of the equivalent, it's not worth the upgrade. I'm gonna be honest with you. And for any of the gaming handheld devices, if it's gonna be your first PC, I would probably safely advise you don't try to do that. This is definitely one that's geared towards gaming in mind, and you can get away with a little bit of gaming when it comes to like putting it on like a laptop. And honestly, like laptops also have like deals here and there and are just functional as just regular like workhorse PCs when it comes to just like your day-to-day thing. These guys, they're not. You can make it work, but it does cost extra for all the different accessories. So, otherwise, it is nice that this one comes with like its own controller. It comes with a display, pretty loud speakers. But otherwise, if we're talking about like your first like PC whatsoever, I would probably recommend just like investing in like a tower that you can upgrade over time. Ultimately, nah, but you know what? If you have the extra funds and you really like all the things, including extra battery life, more RAM, more storage space, then ROG Ally X might be calling out to you. Personally, I think you should probably just wait. So in short, there's a lot of promise going forward with the ROG Ally X and potentially other competitors, or this, Asus's like next upcoming like device if they ever decide to go forward with this. It definitely gives you an idea as to where we're going as far as, the PC marketplace. But I do fear on top of that it becomes even more costly to even have those, to a point where like it might even be better off for you to just go get a laptop or a tower. I think one of the takeaways here is understanding that, as we get better with like technology and these tiny handheld devices, it's going to become more expensive. I mean, you see that in smartphones and whatnot. As long as you understand this and you still have like a really enjoyable time playing all these games portably, I think you can't really go wrong, regardless of the handheld you decide to choose. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to the Tanuki channel. And I'll see you guys in the next one.